Think health is about just diet and exercise? Think again. If you ever struggle to stay on track, it might not be a willpower problem. It might be your environment setting you up for failure. So today we are diving into the hidden forces that control your health more than you think. All right, guys, so today what we're going to be really diving into are the social determinants of health. Now, there are 5 key determinants, just to kind of give you guys the overview. These are non-medical factors that influence health outcomes, and those 5 are economic stability, so things like income, employment, debt, expenses, education access, and quality, so health literacy, early childhood education, higher education opportunities, healthcare access and quality, so things like insurance, provider access, trust in the healthcare system in general. Then we have neighborhood and built environment, housing, air quality, access to parks, crime rates around you. And the 5th one is going to be social and community context. So support systems, discrimination, workplace conditions. People talk about your zip code being a better predictor of your life expectancy than your genetic code. So these are kind of the concepts there that we're going to be breaking down in today's episode. So we're going to touch on why this matters for you specifically for optimizing your health. And we're going to talk about changes that you can make that can lead to some massive health gains. So I don't want you guys to feel powerless regardless of the situation that you're in. There are ways that we can just simply focus on making the best decisions that we have available to us. And we understand that, we won't all have these same, things around us or access to specific things as far as even going to a gym. Maybe you can't get to a gym if you don't have a car. You can't ride your bike that far. So there will be some things within this episode that hopefully you can take home and apply to you regardless of what your current situation is.
I think this is something a lot of people don't even realize is a thing, especially in the age of social media, where it can be really easy to, one, compare your life with someone else's life and think that, if this person has achieved this level of success with their health and I don't do things exactly in that way, in the same way that they're doing it, then I am never going to get there. So I'm glad we're diving into just obviously what these social determinants are, but also like our take on how you can navigate them to improve your life. And I think, again, it's just something people don't realize is even a thing.
Yeah, I think, I remember learning about social determinants of health back when I was a health major in college. And it was eye-opening for me because I think when we think about health, much of what we think about, and maybe this is also because we're like very immersed in the little fitness bubble, but I think when a lot of people think about health, they think dieting and working out. And so I sometimes like to open up the conversation of what else could we be talking about beyond just a set of macros or a workout plan. I think that's something that even with our own coaching, we've tried to explain before to people, like your health and health coaching is not just like us being a macro calculator for you. It's not about just a set of macros and the perfect workout plan. You could have a set of macros and a great workout plan. It doesn't automatically equal health. So there are other contributing factors. And, for some people that it feels controversial. Because there is this conversation of where does personal responsibility play a role in all of this? How much do we say this is affecting our health, but does that give personal responsibility a free pass, or can both be true at the same time? And, if you've listened to this podcast for more than probably even one episode, you know that we are a big fan of context and nuance and understanding that oftentimes two things can be true at the same time.
Absolutely. And the big take home I want you guys to be thinking about throughout this episode, and kind of the point of making this, it's, again, acknowledging that there are certain factors that can absolutely be limiting you and what feels like your opportunity to improve your life, to improve your health overall. You can be put in a much worse situation than another person, someone else you go to work with, go to school with, whatever your situation is. But again, to circle back, there are ways that we can maximize our current situation. So I don't ever want you guys to feel stuck, like you're helpless, like there's nothing I can do about it. I want you guys to focus on building in this growth mindset in all areas of your life. But today specifically, especially if you feel like you've been struggling, even if by all accounts, it seems like you've got a relatively great life, you just have certain things going on. You're like, I can't make this thing happen. You don't have to fit into anyone else's box. And to kind of touch on what Joelle was talking about before, a lot of this opportunity, it really comes from, and we'll touch on education, but just general awareness. So what you've been told from mass media, from your social media influencers, from whoever you're digesting information from, just people in your community, those around you, that predisposes you to how you feel about certain things. So we talk about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. That fixed mindset is typically our immediate environment, our immediate influences telling us the things that we can and can't do, the things we can and cannot change. You may have all the cards stacked against you, but I promise you, you can change your situation. No matter how minute it feels in the moment or how minute the individual task feels, you can change your situation. And if you build upon that and create some momentum, the things that happen over time are nothing short of dramatic transformations. And that's what I want you guys to focus on pulling from throughout this entire episode.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned what you're consuming on social media too, Josh, because I think that, depending on who and what you are consuming, you're going to see mixed messages around health and this conversation as a whole. There are a lot of people that face real struggles due to finances or work schedules or family responsibilities or lack of, access to healthy food. And if they feel blamed for their circumstances, they may just shut down. And so instead of being like, well, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, which like you might be getting that message on social media, or you obviously just don't want it bad enough. Some people are hearing that message on social media versus, wow, I hear you. Balancing work and kids and healthy eating is no joke. It is no surprise that it feels hard because it is hard. And it is really frustrating when healthy options are more expensive or less available. That is a real challenge. But let's see where we can compromise. And just a prime example that I like to give is people being so maybe so hyper concerned with social media says I have to eat organic everything. And so now if it's not organic, they're not buying the fruit. Like, I'd rather you buy the unorganic fruit and get the fiber and get the fruit and get the nutrients than be so hyper aware of, oh, well, if it's not organic, I shouldn't even, so-and-so says it's a waste of time. Like, we have to meet in the middle, and telling people you just don't want it bad enough, or, your circumstances don't matter. That's not helpful for people. So
Or
we
how
have
many
to find
times
that middle ground. Yeah.
How
go
many
ahead.
times have we had clients come to us who come from coaches who say things like, just try harder next week, or, you're not giving it enough. Your motivation is too low, when in reality, it's one of these issues that they're struggling with. And it can be a social media person telling you that, and it can be a coach telling you that. And if it's a coach telling you that, that's even more, in my opinion, like defeating for the person, because they have this person that they invested in telling them that they're not trying hard enough when they are trying really, really hard. And it's just a multitude of other reasons holding them back. So, I mean, I can think of a handful of clients I've had personally over the years who have had that message from coaches, and it breaks my heart, because it's not their fault. It's they're a product of their environment. They're a product of whatever they're living through, and it's not a matter of trying harder. Like, that is that is the last thing they need to hear.
And
So
I
I'll tell
think
a quick, sorry, Joel, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to inject one last thing here. We obviously talk about the L5 method and mindset being a piece of that. And I do think that that's a big piece of this conversation too, because look, it's easy for us to dwell on what's unfair. But if we can shift the focus toward taking actionable solutions, which is, I'd like to think in those coaching situations, Alessandra, when someone works with us, that they have a coach there to say, hey, look, I know we can't change the cost of groceries right now, and that part really sucks, but let's look at some budget-friendly ways that we can add in some more protein and fiber, right? That's what I mean by an actionable solution. We might not have time for a full gym workout because we're business owners and parents and whatever else, but we can build strength in 20 minutes at home. So let's see how we could fit that in. So I just think there's a mindset component of like acknowledging the barrier, but then shifting the conversation to being more solution focused.
1,000%. And I just wanted to tell a quick story just on our current phase of life and the current things that we have going on over here. So obviously we just had a
Which
kid.
of the 846 things?
I'm going to pick 47 of them just real quick.
Okay.
If you guys have, like 6 hours, so I just want to explain it real quick. So I got hit with the worst. I think it was a flu. I didn't actually test for this one. Sickness I've had since, as far as I can remember, a few weeks before Wes was born. 105 fever, like delirious, just felt weird, just the whole time, terrible. And then we get a little closer, and I get hit with COVID right before Wes was born. And then after this, in the midst of this, Wes is born. So if you can kind of get where I'm coming from in this regard, over the last month and a half, my training has been off. My entire routine has been off. And this is an acute stressor. Some people live not with being sick all the time, though some do, but with these just chronic stressors, their environment. So the things we're going to dive into today, for myself, if I had a coach harp me, why didn't you get your workout in? Well, I was fucking sick. I just told you. I've been sick for a month and a half, basically, on and off, and just trying to get this in. You can't have this black and white. You're doing it or you're not. You're on plan or you're off plan. Everything has to ebb and flow. And in this season of life that I'm currently in, understanding that, and whether I'm getting 1 or 2 training sessions in, I'm focusing on moving my body. We're getting outside as a family. We're getting that fresh air. We're getting the sunlight. We're still choosing quality foods, and maybe I'm not putting as much time into these big gourmet meals for dinner for everybody at the end of the day, but we're doing the best we can with what we have. So that's the side of things where, like, yes, there are certain factors that will derail you from the optimal scenario, and the optimal scenario is not going to work for anybody outside of Brian Johnson. So the 99.999% of the population, Brian Johnson is the one who lives basically in a lab and is trying to age backwards. Yes. Cool story, but most of us in the entire planet cannot be doing that. So again, coming back to this episode, our goal here is to bring you aware to certain things and allow us to create change. So through awareness, we create change. There are certain things that we can do in our situation. So rather than kind of talking in circles here, I'll dive right into how those factors impact your health and fitness. And if we start with, something just like money and food, those choices, we come into the kind of the Whole Foods versus the dollar menu dilemma. Do we have to go eat everything organic like Joel was talking about? And on the other end of the spectrum, I can only afford to eat, McDonald's dollar menu every single day. There are certain things in the middle there where it's not going to be an overwhelming burden on cost to make quality choices.
I think where social media really screws people is there's this notion of, which is kind of like the opposite of what we preach, but there's this notion of like, if it's not organic and it's not non-GMO and it's not grass-fed, then like, don't even waste your time. Don't even waste your money. And I'm like, that's not the message we should be, giving people. Oh, don't buy strawberries because they're covered in pesticides unless it's organic. Like, no, I'd rather you buy the non-organic strawberries, get the nutrients, the fiber, the micros, and please wash them first. But like, I'd rather you get that. Or, salmon is another big one. Like, yes, ideally more optimal, a little bit more nutrient dense, better omega-3 ratios in Alaskan wild salmon. Yeah. But for the person who's not getting enough omega-3s at all, isn't really including anything fatty fish in their diet, choose the farmed salmon. I'd rather you have that than no salmon at all. And that's just like one example from a grocery standpoint. But I think if we when we get too specific on what people should be consuming, i.e. organic, or we get too bougie with like what we want people to choose, we just raise the barrier to entry. And most Americans have a really, really hard time just like getting into where do I start? How do I start? What do I have to cut out? What do I have to start having? How do I have to start exercising? The barrier to entry is already so high. And I feel like social media has made it so much higher for people because now it's like, you got to do this and you got to wear the blue light glasses and you got to do this and you need this supplement and you need to work out this way if you want to burn fat and you need this supplement if you want to gain muscle and you need organic if you want to be healthy and you need grass-fed if you don't want to grow a third arm. And it's like, or we could lower the barrier to entry and we could remind people that fruit and vegetables are a great option no matter what. And beef is a great option regardless of if it's grass-fed. And salmon's a great option regardless of if it's wild. And walking is a great option if you can't get to the gym that day.
I feel like this has always been the struggle in health and fitness, social media or not, over the decades. And it's almost just disguised in different ways as we go through different phases of life. Like right now, the wellness era is having its boom, where you see all of the saunas and the cold plunges and the blue light glasses and like all of these more bougie type things and the organic and everything you said, Joelle. Previously, like I think back to when we all got into the health and fitness space, maybe like college era, it was all clean eating, and it was just disguised as almost a different word. Same concept, just disguised differently. And I know our parents also like went through their own, like I remember when my parents like were all in the supplements and the hydroxy cut and the different diets. Yeah. And like that was the thing at the time. So it's always kind of been that same message of like, this is the superior thing. And if you're not doing this, then nothing else is worth it. But it's just sort of shifted over time. And I think it's really interesting to see how it's shifted over time. But at the end of the day, it's always been like, there's always been that thing that people are striving for. And now it's just more prevalent because social media, I think, is so much more prevalent in our lives.
Well, that's marketing at its finest. But when you simplify it to the level of farmed salmon versus a Big Mac for dinner every night, it should get blatantly obvious. Like, the farmed salmon's okay. Is it ideal? Maybe not. But is the Big Mac? But you fall have back people to the Big Mac.
But you have people on Instagram being like, if you're going to buy farmed salmon, it might as well be a McDonald's large French fry and a Big Mac. Like, no, that is not the message that people need to hear.
But that's what gets likes and views and comments and all of the engagement.
The more extreme, the more engagement. Keep that in mind, people.
Of marketing. Yeah, it's crazy. And to kind of circle on a similar topic here, things like food deserts and how they impact nutrition. So for those who don't have a Whole Foods and a Trader Joe's and a Stop and Shop and a Food Lion and a Big Y and a Target to go pick all their favorite fruits and veggies and foods, and maybe it's, I don't even know what to fill in the blank there with. But if you're in a store where it just feels like there are more unhealthy options than healthy options, a lot of times that's done on purpose, especially with marketing, especially with the height of certain foods on kids' aisles and the shelves there. They're just easier to grab. So again, through awareness, we create change. And by being aware of the healthier options we can be taking, we can eliminate the impact on nutrition of these things like food deserts. So again, going back to the simplification of everything, it's at the end of the day, prioritizing whole foods, nutrient-dense options over the ultra-processed stuff and everything in between. So, the more whole foods that you can consume throughout the day, the better situation that you're going to be in. And then when it comes to money and food choices, it doesn't even just stop at the food itself. That economic stress leads to chronic health issues. You talk about chronic stress, chronic inflammation, constant suppression of your immune system. These are things that you feel on a daily basis. And it's just, we'll talk a little bit about mindset, and, we do this in several episodes. But just imagine how you feel on a bad day and the choices that you make on that singular bad day, if you are lucky enough to only have one bad day at a time. Some people live in a damn bad day. It's like a bad dream. And I completely, I can empathize with that. Yeah. So just being aware of the situation that they're in, and okay, how can we kind of pull out of this funk? That's one situation. But just to bring awareness through that chronic stress leading to those long-term health issues, that is another component of this.
Yeah, there's I saw a stat recently about life expectancy, and it was about how research consistently shows that income and education and housing and environment are influential pieces of health outcomes, even more so than like medical care specifically. And the example they gave was that life expectancy is lower in low income communities due to higher exposure to stress, poorer nutrition, and limited healthcare access. And like when you talk about poor nutrition or exposure to stress or low income communities, there's also the question of what's the access to education in that. Like how much are people actually aware of what fiber is or why that's beneficial or what protein is or why you should be having protein even if you're not a bodybuilder. And so I think there's just so many different factors that influence health, and we greatly oversimplify it if we just say it's, macros or nutrition and workouts. Like, yes,
Well,
those are
even
huge pieces of it, but
look
not the
at
only.
when we did the alcohol thing. Like, how many people were
Yeah.
not aware of alcohol being an actual poison to our bodies? Like, they just had no
Carcinogen.
idea. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, it impacts every aspect. But I do think that it's social media can be so great because it can educate you. But again, a lot of the content that you're seeing that's going viral and that is blowing up is not the content that should be educating you. Unfortunately, that's just how it works.
We're kind of touching on two different topics we're going to hit on in the next two we cycle through. So I want to kind of steer it into the health and education, like the education, health, literacy lane here, and exactly what you just talked about. We touched on it a little bit in that first section, but talk a little bit about how misinformation keeps people stuck in these unhealthy cycles. They're seeing the wrong things.
Yeah, I think right now on social media, we're seeing a big battle of authority. Who is the authority that should be speaking on this? And we're in this really weird time, to be honest, because you have here's my biggest concern. I'm trying to
Tread lightly.
Yeah, I'm trying to tread lightly because unfortunately,
stomp
I
those
know
fucking feet.
Josh does not want to tread lightly. Josh is like full send. But here's the thing, and here's what's tricky about social media right now that I'm finding, even as I am a content creator, but it's not my job. Okay, it's kind of whatever. Anyway, I hate to say I'm a content creator, but I do create content, and that is a part of my job. Here's what I'm noticing as a content creator in the health space. So many health topics are becoming politicized right now. And it makes me personally not want to even talk about specific topics because they've been politicized. And I understand that there is an interplay between politics and health. I am not naive to that. But it's really freaking annoying when you don't necessarily want your page or your content to have political controversy, but there are either political figures who talk about specific health topics, or there are health content creators talking about political topics. And now there is this weird, I think, entanglement between the two, that there are topics I don't want to even talk about now that should just be health topics that we could educate on. But now it's like, oh, if you talk about being anti-food dye, now you must have voted for this person. And if you talk about, vaccines, you must love this person or hate this person. It's like, can't we just talk about health without necessarily there being a political affiliation? Because we're not going to talk politics. I'll tell you that right now. But I know that among the three of us, there are things we agree with and disagree with on both sides of everything. And so I think,
okay.
And that's okay. And so I hate how so many health topics have become politicized, and it makes it weird to talk about. And to come back to your question, Josh, which I almost forgot there for a minute, is that we're in this weird battle of authority right now, which, Alessandra, you said people do learn a lot from social media, and that could be really great, but also social media being your source of education, which is how most people are getting their news and their education and their resources right now, is social media. That can become problematic because you have one person who's not an expert, right, in a specific topic, talking about a specific topic, but maybe they have millions of followers. And so due to that alone, people think, wow, that person must have authority, or they're challenging what's mainstream, so they must know something that the rest of us don't, or they're going against mainstream, and so it's conspiratorial. But if it's conspiratorial, it probably means they're onto something here, right? And so then you're in this weird okay, well, the PhD in nutrition is saying that I don't need to worry about XYZ, and they obviously have the credentials in the background, but then you have the flip side being like, well, they must be getting paid to say that, or they were indoctrinated, they got that degree through an indoctrinated system, so obviously that's what they're going to say. And you're just in this weird, really weird time of like the battle of authorities, and who do I trust, and who is qualified and credentialed enough to speak on this topic. And I feel for consumers, because it's really hard to navigate information right now.
And even pre-political tie-in to all of this, we have the Looney Tunes, who I can think of off the top of my head,
Yeah.
who are telling you things like vegetables are going to kill you. You can only eat meat. And meat is killing you. You can only eat vegetables. And on both sides of things, they'll make their strong arguments. They've got millions of followers. And now everyone in the middle is like, okay, well, if I like this guy better, I'm going to follow him. If I like this guy better, I'm going to follow that guy, and everything that guy says. It is such an oversimplification to say. And a lot of times there really isn't this component of common sense, but it really comes back to common sense. When you are consuming primarily nutrient-dense whole foods, and that is the majority of your diet, and that is what you continue to focus on, a lot of these other things, maybe they do have long-term impacts, maybe they don't. But if you are eating the ultra-processed stuff now, and you are significantly overweight, and you are chronically stressed, the dye, the chemical, the extra thing on this random piece of food has such a much smaller impact. Like, that's the irony of this entire situation. The majority of our country is significantly overweight. They're obese. They're unhealthy. We've got a stack of comorbidities, and we're worried about dyes and chemicals. You are going to die long before any of those have an impact. It's completely irrelevant to you. And I say this with love. It has no impact on you, because you are going to have something else significantly worse hit you significantly sooner, unless you get your health in control and you focus on, let's go full simplified. And I hate this, just focusing on calories and, just the deficit or just the surplus. Eat whatever you want, as long as you're in a caloric deficit, will get you to lose weight. That really is step one, you starting to lose weight. Now, I'm not going to tell you to have a pack of Skittles every day and just stop eating after that, but you could lose weight doing that. And again, to be very clear, that is the opposite of my stance. You should not be focusing specifically on the calories. I'm big time, again, on fiber diversity, nutrient-dense whole foods. But to simplify it for you guys, getting to a healthy weight, becoming active, managing stress is level one. And all these other things that have our heads tied in a knot are irrelevant until that becomes the truth.
Yep.
I think another important aspect of the social media conversation too, though, like, yeah, I totally agree with everything you said, Joelle, about the political side of things. And then we also have the people who look towards just the influencers and the content creators who may have the perfect body or a body that you desire. And therefore, you feel you need to do every single thing that they're doing to achieve that. And I think the whole body image side of things comes into play here too. And again, like, you're looking to this person because they are kind of the authority, because they got their body to look a certain way. But that doesn't mean that they know how to help you achieve goals, any of the goals that you have. They did it for themselves, and that's great. And I think there is a power in sharing your story and sharing your own experience. And I'm glad that people are using social media as that outlet. But that line is very thin as far as where they cross over into giving other people advice based on how they achieved it versus an actual coach with credentials who can truly help you in a way that makes sense for your life, giving you advice. And I think knowing that difference is very important because, again, you're probably seeing these people who have millions of followers, who have the perfect body, the seemingly perfect lifestyle, and it can be enticing to want to try to live that way. But their life is not your life, and I guarantee you there are a lot of other things going on that you are not seeing, or they're just things that don't make sense for your life. So just wanted to tie that side of things in too, because I think that is something that is very common still to this day, and kind of has always been common since I've been on social media, is to follow the people who look a certain way or have achieved certain things that maybe they achieved it in a way that made sense for them, but does not mean it makes sense for the masses.
I'm going to jump in real quick just because we have often circled around and mentioned very, very softly, subtly, a coach, a coach, a coach.
Our coaches.
It's It's Levolution Health Coaching or nothing. It is Levolution Health Coach or bust. There's no one else I recommend over our team. We have the best credentials, and if you don't believe me, don't take my word for it. Go on our site, check those credentials out. I am so sick of the watered down things that you guys are seeing and experiencing with these other health quote unquote coaches. It just makes everyone else look bad. So I'm going to stop saying a coach. If you're working with a coach, it's Levolution Health Coaching or bust. And check out our testimonials, check out the credentials. That's not just me saying it. Check out the reviews, Trustpilot, Google, wherever you want to find it. Our team is the team, bar none.
Let me say this. If and when I get to the point where I'm hiring a coach, I'm hiring one of our coaches. I'm not going elsewhere to get coaching. So let that speak for itself. If I'm, as a coach, investing in a coach, I am investing back into our business in our team and one of our coaches to work with. That's how good they are.
Yep.
All right. Now to keep cruising, I know we have a moderate timeline here. The next one up is going to be neighborhood and movement. So some people may have better access to safe walking paths, parks, gyms. I guess we can start with that one. So let's say someone is living in a place where maybe it's just busy roads. It doesn't necessarily have to be an unsafe neighborhood in that aspect. What are some things that we can be cognizant of, and how can we improve this?
Yeah, I think this is potentially twofold, because you could argue if you're not in a great neighborhood or you're in a busy streets or not, I think oftentimes if we are not in a safe neighborhood, don't have safe housing, or like exposure to crime and violence is higher, I think that's potentially twofold. So the argument there might be like, I don't feel safe walking around my neighborhood, which is a definitely fair argument. And so to that, someone might say, oh, well, just walk on a treadmill instead. But I'm going to like play devil's advocate with myself, is that if we're in potentially an unsafe neighborhood, there's a good chance that socioeconomic status is playing a role there. And so maybe we can't afford a gym membership, or maybe we don't have the space for a treadmill in our 1-bedroom apartment or whatever it is. So I think when we think about a neighborhood being unsafe potentially, or housing or crime and violence being prevalent in our environment or neighborhood or area, a lot of times I would say financial stability or socioeconomic status is playing some sort of role there. So when we respond to how do we help that person, we also have to be cognizant of what does the budget or finances look like for that person.
Absolutely. And it could be a situation, again, where maybe you're not throwing a treadmill in the living room or next to your bed. It's not feasible for whatever reason. How can we incorporate, like, this is kind of funny if you just picture it in a typical day, but I would take all of our sales calls back when I was still doing them in our office, which was like 12 feet wide, pacing for hours, just back and forth. And I may not leave that room for 90% of my day, and I'd have 12,000, 13, 14, 15,000 steps, because it was nonstop back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn, just go. So yes, you have ridiculous things like that at your disposal. Maybe you work from home, maybe, something, a similar line where you're in your office and you're on the phone and you can kind of walk back and forth throughout. Like, that'll add up. It doesn't, negate movement because you're not outside. Outside's great. You want the sunlight, open a window, walk back and forth. You can make do. You could also be doing body weight movements. We've got a couple things coming out as far as limited equipment and how can you maximize stuff. But you could do some push-ups, some planks, some squats, whatever it is. Take 15 minutes, take breaks between each set, do what you can do, go back, do another set. All that adds up. And coming from doing nothing to doing that, it's a ridiculously significant improvement when you talk about stats as far as decreasing your risk of comorbidities, decreasing overall mortality rates. It's incredible.
I can't stress enough how much something is better than nothing. And I think that's a very, very common misconception. Like, it has to be this 60-minute workout, or it has to have all the weights, or it could be at home in your goddamn PJs and slippers, and you doing push-ups and body weight squats. And that would be better than nothing.
Agreed. And I think, I mean, even if you got a couple of cheap resistance bands, spent $10 on Amazon, you can do so much with that too. Like a couple loop bands and a couple smaller mini bands. Like, even if you have nothing else, that can be a great way to get yourself started. Again, in your living room, using your couch as a bench. Like we've had many clients work out in that way, especially when COVID hit, like when everybody could not go to the gym anymore and you could not buy adjustable dumbbells or any fitness equipment. Like everything was like the prices were either jacked up or it was all back ordered. Like it was just not there. How many of our clients were doing that? Just they were forced into it because they had no other option. And it was really cool to see how much they were able to progress still while not in their typical gym setting or having like some of them literally could not go outside. I remember. And it was a challenge, but it was also something that I really took pride in helping them figure out, because it was like, all right, this is new for you. This is new for me as a coach. Like we've never had to deal with this before either. Like, let's see what we can do. Yep. And it was just really rewarding. And they really felt proud of themselves when they got to the point where they could go back to the gym, because they were able to focus on doing the things that they could with what they had available. And they still felt good each day, or as good as they could possibly feel, by doing something over nothing.
Yep. Comes back down again to lowering the barrier to entry.
For sure. And to really hammer that home, the change almost nothing, get nothing that you could take home, like just from this right now: some body weight movements, some pacing throughout your home, meditation, journaling, and coming up with a consistent bedtime. Those things alone, if your health is off, you're probably struggling in most, if not all, those areas. You put those pieces, we haven't even touched nutrition. That's not even touching it. You put those simple things in place, you're going to feel better. You're going to start looking better. Your mental health is going to improve. Your productivity is going to improve. Your overall health outcomes long term are going to be exponentially better. I'm not talking like 10, 15%. We're talking about 60, 70%. And we haven't touched diet. Those are things that cost $0 and require very minimal changes to your lifestyle that can have massive impact.
It'd be maybe cool. This can maybe be a podcast episode for another time, because we'd have to like run all of these numbers. But I would be so curious to even maybe like poll Instagram on what is the average like food budget for people per week, and then building out, like, if I had $100 for the week to spend on food for my family of 4, what would we prioritize and how? Like, what would we buy? Would we buy in bulk? Would we shoot for frozen? Would we shoot for canned stuff? I think that could potentially be a cool like nutrition on a budget episode. So let us know in the comments if you want that. But that could be a cool thing for us to break down. I'd love to know on average what people spend on groceries per week.
I've gotten asked that question a lot of times, and I always like hesitate to answer because I don't want people to compare or think that they have to spend what we spend on food. I think we've even talked about it in previous episodes, like before the merger, Josh. But yeah, I've always kind of hesitated to share my answer because I don't want that to be a limiting factor for people. So I think that's a really good idea, Joelle.
Yeah, maybe we even do like you have a $150 budget, you have a $200 budget, you have a $400 budget, and we could potentially break down, like, call it 3 different food budgets for people and how we would go about shopping with that budget.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
DM us if you want it.
Let us know. What do we have left, Josh? We went through economic stability, education, access. Oh, that was all 5? Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Social community context. Yeah. All right.
We hit all 5. So really, guys, closing thoughts, final takeaway. Just want to remind you that your environment plays a massive role in your health, but with awareness and small changes, you can work with what you've got to build a healthier future. People don't really, maybe you don't even think about this, but the concept of the fitness league, this podcast, we are not the fitness league. This podcast is labeled the fitness league. The idea, the concept is that the league is made up of you guys. You guys are the fitness league. You guys are why we're here. We're kind of steering the conversation. We're steering the ship, but you guys are the reason we're showing up. We're putting out these resources. We're making these episodes. We're on social media. We want to make the world a happier, healthier place. It's little baby steps we're going to take. Some of you work with us. Some of you utilize our app. Some of you just use the free resources and the podcast, and we appreciate every single one of you for being here. So just to be very clear, you are the Fitness League. And with that in mind, we do ask that if you have listened beyond 3 episodes, you share it. Or share an episode, share your favorite episode. You tag us on social media, leave us a 5-star review. You can write a little paragraph if you want, or just click the 5 stars. What that allows us to do is reach more people. It allows us to grow the Fitness League and impact the world. Again, that's our ultimate goal. We don't have paid ads on here. We don't pay to promote this. Like, we just put out these resources. And again, most of what we do is for free, so that one person hears that one thing they can take home and they can utilize today. So again, that's our only ask. Otherwise, keep hanging out, listening for more evidence-based health and fitness insights. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Where can they find you?
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik.
At Joelle Samantha.
I'm at Josh Skutnik.
And everything else you need is linked in the show notes.